Welcome back to another edition of the Prepper Recon podcast. Whether your plan is to bug out or bug in, CampingSurvival.com has all of your preparedness needs, including fish antibiotics, long-term storage food, and water filters. Use coupon code PrepperRecon for 5% off your order at CampingSurvival.com. Today's guest is John Theo. John is the author of the new book, Mission Trip. John, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on, Mark.
Absolutely. So tell us about Mission Trip.
Okay, Mission Trip is what I would call a post-apocalyptic novel. It's not immediately after an economic collapse. It's decades after. So at the time, it takes place in 2077. And at that time, the U.S. is kind of a footnote in the world's history books. The U.S. fell to despotism through quantitative easing. Constitution gets banned. World wars ensue. Biological nuclear wars, and it's basically a retelling of the Pilgrim story where a group of Christians end up fleeing the country to go live on a man-made island that floats in the ocean and to create a kind of liberal and figurative Christian bubble and restart, try to do a reboot. So it's kind of a futuristic retelling of the Pilgrim story.
And there were some tech companies that were sort of doing the man-made islands on barges and things out in California. Did that sort of was that part of what influenced you for the man-made city?
Not really. Maybe. I've seen stories like that over the years. I came to Christ. I was a cultural Christian growing up. I came to Christ later in life. And I started going to church. Everyone's like, get out of the Christian bubble, get out of the Christian bubble. So to me, it was like, well, first off, I was like, let me in the Christian bubble and shut the door behind me. You don't know what it's like out there. But besides that, I was just kind of trying to create a literal and a figurative Christian bubble. The island floats, it submerges, it has a force field around it. So it literally is a Christian bubble. But even trying to create this utopia, I point in the story, sin still finds a way in, secularism finds a way in. And decades later, they don't. One of the main themes is those who don't remember the past are condemned to repeat it, and they don't learn their lessons. And the whole same pattern arises again that has arisen in the United States over the past couple centuries.
And talk to us a little bit about how we got from today, the headlines that we've got in the news right now, to the world of Mission Trip. How did we finally get criminalized as Christians to the point of being forced underground?
Sure. Basically, it's a what would happen if we had a Bernie Sanders, a Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, or several other people like that for the next few presidential elections. You have people like that, and I'm pretty confident. I'm probably not going to offend any of your listeners by saying that.
No, we've weeded most of them out. They've been winnowed out with the chaff.
So basically, what if Obama was president for another 20 years? You know, the Supreme Court would be completely ruined. The Constitution would be trampled upon. He's already trampled upon the Constitution. Second Amendment rights are almost gone in certain states, and I'm a huge fan of the First Amendment. And the Second Amendment protects the First Amendment. So I think once the Second Amendment goes away, which could happen in our lifetime, I think you're very quickly going to see an acceleration of the religious freedom being just destroyed in this country. So I don't think it's too far of a stretch to say that this could happen if a couple bad decisions are made in our political future.
Yeah, I don't think so at all. I think it's very, very likely. I think that the only thing we have to do to get to the world of Mission Trip is nothing. And on that same conversation, let's look at that same timeline, and now let's take it to the left. So let's go back. How did we get from a nation founded on religious liberty? How did we get to where we are right now today?
I think, again, it's the same theme I have in my book. Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. And we were clearly a Christian. I have a YouTube channel as well under John Theo, and I just did a whole YouTube video on state constitutions, not our constitution, but the state ones. And it is just riddled with Christian themes, Christian words. Certain people couldn't even hold office without even professing a faith in Christ. So it's clear that we were a Christian nation. I'm not saying we are now. We were a Christian nation, and you just have the revisionists get a hold of the history and start just revising it, and people don't go back to source material anymore. I think that's a huge problem. So now we get professors teaching out of books that quote other professors rather than going back to source material, and everything gets lost in translation. And before you know it, macroevolution's real, global warming's real, and everyone else is stupid.
Yeah, and your book takes, like you said, it takes place in 2077. Back to the timeline. Let's move back forward. Where do you see our freedoms in 2020, which is 4 years from now? And I guess we could assume the worst. I guess Bernie Sanders would probably be the worst. He seems to me like the modern Mao or the modern Stalin. Yeah,
it's just so disappointing in our culture to see how much traction self-avowed socialist is getting in this country. I mean, clearly, if Bernie Sanders or someone like Hillary Clinton gets in, they're going to end up appointing a couple more Supreme Court justices along with Scalia's replacement, which was just tragic what happened to him. And between the Republicans in Congress have not really stood their ground against this administration. So we're clearly going to see more things like checkpoints, which are all over the place around, on our southern borders. You'll see street cameras go from street lights to street corners, and it's a slippery slope. Everyone I talk to around here, everyone's fine with having cameras on their street lights, and it just drives me bananas. But you're going to end up seeing things like that migrate to street corners, and you're going to have the creativity on the left is never sleeps, and I can't. I can't even. I think everything is going to ramp up against Christians. Let me just say that.
Yeah, the folks on the left, they are a driven bunch, aren't they?
Yeah. Evil doesn't sleep.
We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. The dollar's lost over 90% of its purchasing power since 1971. Silver, on the other hand, has proven to be a very stable form of wealth preservation over the years. And where do you buy silver? Silver.com, of course. Silver.com offers fantastic prices on gold and silver. Check out Silver.com today.
In 7 Cows, Ugly and Gaunt, Book 1, Behold Darkness and Sorrow, Daniel Walker begins having prophetic dreams. Through one of his dreams, Daniel learns of an imminent threat of an electromagnetic pulse attack which will wipe out America's electric grid, sending the country into a technological dark age. If they want to live, Daniel and his friends must focus on faith, wits, and preparation to be ready before the lights go out. Buy your copy of 7 Cows, Ugly and Gaunt, Book 1, Behold Darkness and Sorrow, by best-selling author Mark Goodwin, in paperback, Kindle, or audio edition from Amazon.com today.
I suppose Kim Davis was the first Christian in America to be imprisoned for simply obeying her Christian faith. Do you expect to see more of that type of activity where Christians are being actually incarcerated?
Yeah, I do. If we don't have a fundamental change in this next election, I definitely do. And I subscribe to a website called ICC, International Christian Concern. Mm-hmm. Every day they're sending me updates about Christians just being slaughtered all over the world. So what Kim Davis went through was tragic, but compared to the rest of the world, what our Christian brothers and sisters are going through in North Korea, in China, in Nigeria, in the Middle East, it's unfathomable. And I think we could end up seeing far more. The persecution of Christians in this country could go from legal to physical, I think, very quickly.
Yeah, I think you're right. And, of course, Coach Joe Kennedy, he was suspended for allowing his football team to pray. The Kleins, who own Sweet Cake Bakery in Oregon, they've been sued. And employees all over the country are forced to take diversity training that sets company policies above biblical truths. What do you think about persecution of Christians in the workplace? Do you think that's going to be a growing trend?
Yeah, and it's going to come under, obviously, the guise of political correctness. And it's clearly, they're going to say you like your religion, you can keep your religion, just like Obamacare, but it ain't going to happen. Unless we vote these people out and we get a real, we pull a 180 in this country, which I'm on the fence of whether or not we can actually do it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's looking like Trump's the front runner at the moment. I'm scared to say too much bad about. I've certainly got some serious reservations for him.
Yeah.
But considering what we're up against, I think that I'd probably vote for Darth Vader over Sanders or Clinton. So
yeah.
I'm scared to really start doing too much Trump bashing, because I know there's a really good chance I'm going to have to get up before the sun and get out there and make sure that I cast my vote for the man, even though I have some serious reservations, especially his understanding of the Constitution and the fact that he's supposed to be a Presbyterian Christian. He's professed to be a Christian. He owns strip clubs and nightclubs and bars and casinos, which are all just dens of debauchery.
Yeah, my wife had a good saying. She said that he's good for the conversation. He's bringing up topics that people need to talk about. I was a Rand Paul guy, then I was a Mike Huckabee guy, now I'm a Ben Carson guy. So I'm on the verge of being a 3-time loser here.
Yeah.
So, I think he could. There's a potential he could really turn this country around. I told my wife, I think he's either going to fix it or we're going to have World War III. I'm not sure. It's going to be one extreme or the other. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I definitely, no Bernie, no Hillary.
Yeah, and it's so ingrained now that, I mean, this is even into the military. U.S. Marine Monifa Sterling was court-martialed for having a Bible verse on her desk.
On her desk, right.
And do you think folks serving in the armed forces are still misled into thinking that they're defending our freedoms while having their rights denied themselves?
I think they are, but I'm very hopeful. The people in the military are just a different breed. I mean, these are people putting their life on the line. I think they see through a lot of this garbage of political correctness. I mean, you've heard the saying, "There's no atheist in a foxhole." I think they're going to continue doing what they're going to do, and I don't think they're going to let the government sway them. And if they're going to be court-martialed, I think they'll take it on the chin. I think the majority of our men and women in the service are honorable people, but I hope that they do keep waking up to this left-right paradigm of Republicans and Democrats who just propagate wars. I mean, the foreign policy for Obama is not much different from Bush, and I just to bring it down to the lowest common denominator, I want to have less death across the board. Stop sticking our nose in every country's business. I just want less death. So I'm optimistic that our military will, stand up for the right thing. They're brave people,
Right. And back to Mission Trip. In the book, are all religions, are they all persecuted on an equal basis, or is it just Christians? Because in America, it's been illegal for a public school teacher to require prayer or Bible reading since the 60s. But I think it's in Massachusetts, your state, where children are being taught the pillars of Islam and are being required to learn from textbooks that say, "I bear witness that there is no God but Allah."
There's unfortunately stories like that happening all over the country. I'm in the People's Republic of Massachusetts. I mean, in the book, it's primarily Christians. I mean, the Christians are today, put it in today's day and age, the Christians are mostly the homeschoolers, the Second Amendment people, the constitutional people, the people that lean right or conservative. So they are easily marked the enemies of the state. And in the book, they're the only ones that really put up a fight or a stink and end up being put into FEMA camps, and eventually hundreds of thousands flee to this floating island. And the internal conflict within the story is the main character who had gone on a mission trip decades earlier, lost his wife, lost his lower right leg and has a robotic leg. And so now his son, who's 30 in the year 2077, wants to go back into the world for another mission trip, which no one had done in decades. So the father and the son are kind of having a headbutting contest because the father knows how dangerous it is, but the son wants to go kind of naively, but he wants to go back in and do mission trips. So they're both right and they're both wrong, and they're both, that's kind of the inner struggle within the protagonist's life in the story.
Well,
sorry for jumping all over the place.
No, that's great. It sounds like a really, really interesting story. And back to the idea that, that supposedly we're not allowed to pray in schools because we're not allowed to promote one religion over another. Of course, we just pointed that out, that that kind of falls apart when you look at how Islam's being promoted. But perhaps a more subtle religious indoctrination in the public schools comes in science class, because by teaching children that the creation story from Genesis isn't true, we're essentially telling them that they should embrace an atheistic worldview. And atheism's every much as a religion as Christianity is. Christianity, that defines my beliefs about whether there's a God, where we came from, where we're going, and how we're supposed to live our lives. Yeah. And atheism does the same thing. It tells you whether or not there's a God. Darwinism teaches you where we came from, and it basically tells you that we're going nowhere. So, I mean, that's a religious model to me. So it sounds to me like that through that particular religion is being promoted over Christianity, over Islam, over Buddhism, and all of these other things that supposedly is not supposed to happen in the public schools.
Mark, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, I said this before to my wife, that, I have enough faith to believe Jesus is the Son of God, but to believe that, molecules to man macroevolution with no scientific method behind that, it's not repeatable, it's not predictable. It's nonsense. I don't have that much faith. Sorry.
Yeah, and you bring up another point, because it's a faith-based religion, and a very, and like you said, it takes a lot of faith to believe that nonsense.
And let me just, there is a difference between adaptation or microevolution and macro. Micro, you can observe, you can predict, it's repeatable, you can watch this happen unfold, but macro, it's just molecules to man, it's just nonsense. I'm sorry, but you need to have a tremendous amount of faith for that.
Right. And John, tell us the best place to find your new book, Mission Trip.
Sure. It's available where all ebooks are sold, on iTunes, Amazon, Barnes & Noble's, on cleanreads.com, which is the publisher as well. It's available as an ebook currently right now through the publisher, their prerogative. And I'm hoping it'll be in print in the second run. And, where all ebooks are sold. I also have a YouTube channel under John Theo, and some of my books are available on my website, johntheo.com.
Well, John, thanks so much for taking time to come and talk to us on the show today. And thanks for providing some good, clean entertainment with your new book, because
Thank you.
There's not a lot of that available. And for those of us that try to honor God by, what we watch, what we listen to, and what we read, we really appreciate that there's somebody out there trying to provide that for us.
Thank you again for having me, Mark. I really appreciate it.
Get prepared before disaster strikes. PrepperRecon.com offers MOLLE-compatible individual first aid kits for your home, auto, or bug-out bag. These kits have everything you need to address a traumatic injury, including an Israeli battle dressing, quick clot, EMT shears, suture kit, steri-strips, tourniquet, tough strip bandages, and so much more. Kits are available in OD Green, Coyote, Black, and ACU. $99 includes shipping. Go to PrepperRecon.com and click the Store tab at the top of the home page. Order today before it's too late.